Welcome once again to Wesley Impact. In the next half hour, I'm going to talk on the theme of at cross purposes. And we'll look at a day in the life of Wesley Mission's congregational life. And we meet someone who's written a book about the value of life. Hannah Boland shares very deeply about the way that many people have to suffer in private. Her book, 47 Hours with the Prince, shares joy, grief, and a very raw and honest account of a faith tested in one of those toughest of trials. Hannah, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Look, Hannah, let's go back, if we can, directly to 2010 and the months that followed. Amid the fear of another miscarriage, you passed through that first trimester with a sense of great relief and celebration.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. We had 2 miscarriages and yeah, it was a huge relief, as you say, because that first 12 weeks can be, fraught with danger, and it's almost as if when you get past the 12 weeks, everything's going to be okay.
And then we move into the really tragic part of the story, really, because in a sense you think everything's going right, and then you get some really unexpected, painful news, don't you, as medical staff conclude there is no hope.
That's right. We went for our routine 20-week scan where they do a lot of, just checking that everything is as it should be. And of course, you're halfway along at that stage. And our son was diagnosed with a fairly rare brain abnormality called holoprosencephaly. And it basically meant that most of his brain was missing. So he was still alive and was healthy in every other way, but his brain was just not there.
So your body was telling you everything's fine here, but in reality, when that news came. So what was your reaction to that news? Oh,
devastation, obviously. And, just a real time of wondering how to get through. For us, termination was never an option, even though there was a lot of pressure put on us to terminate the pregnancy. But really just seeking out God's purpose for our son's life.
Probably trying to understand it. Would that be part of it, really? Not fully understanding, but trying to find something.
If I'm honest, no, that really was not a question for me at that time. Just knowing that we do live in a fallen world, and we all do have hardships and things to face. That why was not such a big question at the time. It was just more, what is your purpose here, God, in this situation?
So what things were you drawing on in your Christian faith at that point in time to help you through?
Yeah, a lot of scriptures sort of kept coming to our minds, my husband and I, and the one that really stands out for me is that every child is a gift from the Lord. And just really remembering that in the face of a lot of medical staff telling us that our baby had no value, he was of no worth, and just really speaking the truth in the faces of, those sorts of remarks.
Very tough to listen to people. And that Jesus Christ is your foundation, your rock, the one that you stand on must have been, enormously important for you.
Oh, absolutely. I don't know how people actually get through a situation like that without Jesus as your foundation, because everything else, it's like that hymn says, all other ground is sinking sand. And it truly is, because there is no hope outside of Jesus. What is it all for if Jesus is not your foundation?
So friends and family are watching you at that time, wondering how you're coping. Probably it's a time of witness, really, isn't it?
Oh, I think so. Some of my family are Christians and some of them are not. And it's all well and good to sort of think, oh yes, this will be a really good witness. But when you're in the depth of that situation yourself, you really just have to get through it and cling to God as you can, and let God do what he will to the onlookers in that situation, because there's so much for you to deal with as it is.
Did people actually ask you questions about at that time?
About my faith, or
how you were coping and all the rest of it?
I think a lot of the non-Christians in our family and within our acquaintance, they just assumed that it was our faith that was getting us through. And it did bother me a little bit, because it was almost as if it was our faith, our belief that was getting us through, as opposed to it was actually God who was getting us through.
Yeah.
That's
It's not a
right.
formula, it's not something
No.
like you just a mantra or something you say and you
No,
get through.
that's right.
But Christ himself. Look, we're going to come back and talk a little bit more with Hannah. And before we do that, I'd like to introduce today's performer. Ann-Maree Keefe is a singer and songwriter from Melbourne who shares a truly heartfelt song, sharing her own experience of difficult and painful places. It's called All I Need.
I used to think if I was Eve, I would have never been deceived, and seeing through the serpent's lies, still living under Eden's cloudless skies. Since then you taught me by degrees the levels of my frailty, cracks around the earthen bowl, break me down again and make me whole. For you are like the ocean, and I am like a grain of sand on a shore that lies far as the eye can see. Let your waves wash over me. Forget the work of my hands, the foolish need to understand, a cruelty that turns your life around, and the comfort that will drag me down. Remember all I have learned from all the times that I've been burned. Remember only love will heal the scars, and most of all remember who you are. For you are like the ocean, and I am like a grain of sand on a shore that lies far as the eye can see. Let your waves wash over me. Let your waves wash over me. Let your waves wash over me. Till you are all I need.
Be inspired by Keith Garner's new book, The Authentic Australian Evangelist, Alan Walker. Former Superintendent Alan Walker was once labelled the conscience of the nation, speaking out for the marginalised and the broken across social, political and international debate. Alan's life and work at Wesley Mission is also featured in an address by Keith Garner on DVD. For more information, call 1800 021 821 or visit our website wesleymission.org.au.
Details about Ann-Maree and her debut solo album, Time of the Day, will feature on our website all throughout the week. We're back with author and mother Hannah Boland. You say sometimes the only prayer was, Lord, help me through this day. Just what did you mean by that?
Well, not just sometimes, it still is, to be perfectly honest.
Yes.
I think sometimes the grief or just, you know, dealing with whatever it is you're dealing with in life, it just takes so much energy, emotional, mental, spiritual energy. I think sometimes that's all you can sort of muster the strength to pray is, Lord, help me through. And the amazing thing is that he does honour those prayers. And
look, I'm glad you've said that it continues, because I know that you still suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder.
yeah, well, certainly suffer from ongoing anxiety and depression, and like a lot of mental illness, it comes in waves. So, yeah, there are times where it still is very dark and very difficult.
And that's probably, I know this sounds unusual, it's probably encouraging for some people to hear, because sometimes as Christians we almost present a picture like, there it is, now it's better, and or we move on. Well, life isn't a bit like that, is it, really?
No, that's right. I think you've just hit on a little secret about the book as well. I initially wrote that book really as a record of the series of events for my family, and as I sort of finished up the script for that, I felt God say, no, you need to publish this and you need to get out there and speak just as you are and just with what you're going through, because there are a lot of other people who are in the same sort of position.
And that's one of the chief purposes for you, desires of the book, is to not sugarcoat the gospel, but encourage people in the realities.
Absolutely. The gospel doesn't need sugarcoating. It's without sounding very cliche, it really is the sweetest story on its own.
There's a National Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day in October. And you also highlight, I think, in your book, Bears of Hope and the importance of friends and loved ones, the year of firsts. And these are important things, aren't they, for people to acknowledge?
Oh, absolutely. I think the year of firsts is particularly difficult because for somebody who is expecting to welcome a new child into the world, that at that time of expecting, they're anticipating, you know, the first time being able to take baby to the shops, or, you know, celebrating the first, even your first birthday, not alone, you know, baby's first birthdays or family holidays. So conversely, when the baby isn't there, you actually have to readjust your thinking of what those situations will be like, and it's a very, very painful thing.
Let me turn totally differently now. One of the things that you do is stand-up comedy. Now, that kind of sounds a little bit like two worlds, really. How did you manage to be doing that?
Well, I'm glad you said that it does sound like two worlds, because it's very hard to actually talk about the loss and the comedy without it making it sound like the loss has been less tragic or something that I'm over. I can honestly tell you I don't think I will ever be over losing my children. But the comedy has been born out of just knowing that when I was at my lowest, the things that helped me the most was just being able to go out with friends or see a good movie and laugh again, to actually remember what it was like to laugh, because one of the things I think that can happen is you forget that feeling and you start to think, I'll never feel like that again. And so it doesn't actually change anything, it doesn't change your circumstances, but it does give you a hope that you can actually you might be able to laugh again, and that's really what I want to bring to other people.
And when you're on a theatre stage, you might be well aware that there are people in the audience who've got a multiplicity of experiences, and some of them might be somewhere where you were.
Absolutely, and in this show, I don't talk about the grief or the tragedy or anything like that, because I do want it to be a safe place for people. People are coming out to have that relief of laughter and to forget about their circumstances just for a while.
Look, it's delightful to hear somebody as a Christian talking in this way. What are your hopes for the future? Oh,
I gave up hoping for my sort of future a long time ago. To be honest, it really is whatever God has for me, because, you know, 12 months ago, I never would have thought I would be sitting here talking to you and touring around the state with a stand-up comedy show. So I'll just leave that up to God.
And we just want to wish you well, and thank you for sharing us something personal from your lives. We'll be back in just a moment.
It's been 200 years since the first Methodists met in Australia. To celebrate 2 centuries of faith and pioneering care, CEO and presenter Reverend Dr. Keith Garner takes us back to where it all began.
But we don't begin here at the heart of London. We begin in a town in the north of England.
In this fascinating narrative, Reverend Garner chronicles the history of the life and times of the founder of Methodism, John Wesley. This fresh and thought-provoking documentary takes us on a journey throughout the United Kingdom, beginning in John Wesley's hometown of Epworth.
John Wesley was born here on the 17th of June, 1703.
This 1-hour DVD travels onto his education years and beginnings of social justice in Oxford, to his final years in London. For more information on John Wesley, the man and his mission, call 02 9263 5555 or email us at impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
I know it won't surprise you to know that much of the work at Wesley Mission is behind the scenes, and Christian ministry is no exception. Let's take a look at a typical day in the life of some of our staff in our congregational life who are always ready to offer support, prayer and a listening ear.
Well, I work for Wesley Mission, specifically the International Congregation. My primary role is as the youth pastor of the high school and university youth group of the International Congregation. And my role there is to do everything that I can to encourage and inspire the students to love God and honour Him and to love people. I love the work that I do because I love seeing transformed lives. When I meet people who don't really have a sense of hope in their lives and they discover hope in Christ, there's no greater thing to experience than to see that happening. Because like I said, transforming lives, what better business is there? Seeing people discover meaning and purpose in their lives in Christ, not just for this life on earth, but for eternity. I couldn't give my life to any greater cause than that. Although Wesley Mission has a lot of community work and activities that it does, the spiritual aspect is absolutely key to everything that we as a pastoral team do, but also the greater Wesley Mission. For us as a pastoral team, it's integrated into all of our activities. It's what motivates us, it's what guides us. It's our ultimate aim to honour and love Christ and to love people. And I'm pretty sure and pretty confident that's what's central to why Wesley Mission does what it does.
I work with Wesley Mission in aged care services as a chaplain. My particular focus is in Wesley Home Care Services, Inner West and Western Sydney. I'm part of a team, so that means that we have other staff who are carers and coordinators who organise programs for the aged so they can age at home rather than going to care. This is my friend Maureen. I met Maureen about 2 years ago at a home care Easter function, and she came up to me at the end of the service and she said, "I'm Maureen, I look pretty good, but I'm actually not. Why don't you come and visit me?" And for the last 2 years it's been my pleasure to actually get to know her, a bit about her life, a bit about the struggles, and a great deal about the inspiring way that she lives and overcomes the handicaps that she's got.
And it says that at times I'm quite isolated because if it's really hot, I can't go out, I don't have a car. If it's pouring rain, I don't go out because I don't want to get sick from being wet. And so, yeah, it's really good to have someone to just know that, you know, they're there and you can talk to them and that you can talk about anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Good things, bad things, emotional things, or, you know, if you're having a bad day, you can just get it off your chest and be done with it. So, to me, Gail's very important in my life, as a chaplain, but as a friend.
As I continue through Matthew's Gospel, it's interesting and very important that the words immediately following the incident at Caesarea Philippi and Peter's confession set the scene for what's going to happen all throughout that journey and eventually at the cross. As I read to you these words, we're aware in our minds, aren't we, that Peter got it right in that opinion survey. Who do people say that I am? Who do you say that I am? It was very much a confession. If he got it right then he couldn't have got it more wrong when Jesus predicts his death. So we read from Matthew 16, 21 to 28. Let me read these words. Jesus predicts his death. From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, that he must be killed and on the third day be raised to life. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done. Truly, I tell you, some are standing here and will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. So Jesus warns the disciples of what is lying ahead. He's preparing them, if you like, warning them that he's going to be betrayed, handed over to religious officials, crucified and raised from the dead. And it's Peter who stoutly opposes these words of Jesus, which admittedly didn't fit in with the traditional expectations of a Messiah. Jesus has to put Peter in his place. And gosh, doesn't he have to do that on a number of occasions in the gospel narrative? And Jesus announces that if anyone is going to be a disciple, a potential disciple, they must always take up their cross and follow him. There is a cost that goes with discipleship. And real discipleship comes when a person is willing to give themselves to the Lord and his service, which always passes by the way of the cross. So we hear Jesus in these words here warning the disciples very much of what it's going to mean if they're going to follow him. Peter jumping in with enthusiasm and Jesus having to say to Peter, hang on, you've got it wrong. He even says that it's Satan's words rather than God's words to make that kind of statement. And we can understand why Jesus cautioned the disciples not to talk about his messiahship. I remind you that in verse 20, just preceding our passage, we read these words. Then he ordered his disciples not to tell anyone he was the Messiah. Now this is in Mark's gospel, you find it a lot, the messianic secret. But here in Matthew's gospel, we find it also. And the secret is simply that the disciples can't handle it. It's not a secret because I don't just want you to hold it. It's a secret because at this point in time, they'll not be able to understand the implications of this news. There are some things we don't have simple answers for, in the same way that we've heard today from someone sharing some of the pain in her own life. Sometimes you don't have all the answers, but we know that in God's care and keeping, we can commit ourselves. And it may appear to be one of the greatest contradictions of all time, and certainly at cross purposes with much of our common perception, that if we want to save our life, then we need to be prepared to give it up. And so we read in verse 25 these challenging words, for whoever wants to save their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life will find it. Gosh, what a challenge it is to be able to give up what we have and what we are to Jesus Christ. That's a real challenge. It's something that I want to share with you because for many of you, that may just be where you are. And I wonder if it has something directly to say to you today.
If you would like to know more about today's topic or for more on Keith's message, contact Keith by writing to Wesley Mission, Post Office Box A5555, Sydney South 1235, or email impacttv@wesleymission.org.au.
Once again, thanks for being with us. And our guest on the show today in music ministry has been Ann-Maree Keefe. And here she is again singing another beautiful song called One Little Step. Until the same time next week, goodbye and God bless you.
This is a new day. I've never been here before. This is a new way. Ahead is an open door into a new place, into a mystery, and your love is leading me on. Open my ears so I can hear your voice. Open my heart so you can fill me more. One little step forward is all that you're asking for, and your love is leading me on, and your love is leading me on into the heart of a Father. there'll be love.